Amen. Pimink ichi awa chicham anakonak I patwa ichi inchi skurit pama. Chicham awa kumink anakomak oiknik mimat chautinma panashaik shana ichna anakupat hoichma awiyachna kupat Optimania, Wanet, Yakmu, Palus, Piscus, Winacha, Klikatan, Laiwas, Skinpa, Wushcham, Shieksh, Ochichot, Mukhpa, Siaka, Anak Nchi, Chamanwatin, Kumanak, Pawayumana, Paanichwa, Ku Pawanikha Yakama. Kumanak natash tminwa atamakanisha ku akwaklanusha ikun tichamya anakonak ipatwa ichi nchi skurit pama ichin kwia al clarikush kwaklanusha.
Thank you, Dr. Sun and Dr. Sutherland. Ich Nashmanisha for Kaikabolishi Appleton Corbin Schuster. I got all excited, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Corbin Schuster, I'm a professor of biology here at Heritage University. I am both Warm Springs and Yakima. It's wonderful to see our home so full of community today. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you to our students, our faculty, and community members for joining us today. We have the distinct pleasure, or I have the distinct pleasure, of introducing our guest speaker, Adam Beach, an extraordinary talent and advocate who has left an incredible mark on both the entertainment industry and the fight for Indigenous representation and rights. Adam was born in Ashburn, Manitoba, and grew up on the Lake Manitoba First Nation Reserve. His journey has been one of resilience, shaped by profound loss, and fueled by an unwavering commitment to make a difference. At just 8 years old, Adam experienced the tragic loss of both of his parents, an event that would forever change his path. Yet, from those changes, Adam emerged with strength and purpose, channeling his experiences in a career that not only captivates audiences, but also gives voice to stories often overlooked. Adam's acting career began in the 1990s, and he quickly rose to prominence with roles that resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. His breakthrough came with Smoke Signals, a groundbreaking film that celebrated its authentic representation of Native American life and culture. I'm sure we're all familiar with the iconic Hey Victor. In Flags of Our Fathers, Adam portrayed Ira Hayes, a human Native American, and one of 6 men who raised the U.S. flag at Iwo Jima. In a performance that underscored the complexity and humanity of his characters, he has also brought Indigenous stories to the forefront through his work at Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, where he played Dr. Charles Eastman, earning a Golden Globe nomination. Beyond the screen, Adam is a tireless advocate for Indigenous rights, using his platform to highlight the challenges and triumphs of Native communities. He founded the Adam Beach Film Institute to empower Indigenous youth by providing them with opportunities to tell their own stories through both film and media. Through this initiative, Adam continues to inspire a new generation of storytellers and changemakers. Adam's work is a testament to the power of representation and his commitment to breaking barriers in the film industry, and his dedication to cultural pride and social justice serve as an inspiration to all of us. He reminds us every day that every story matters and that our voices can spark change. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest, Adam Beach.
Dude, I'm gonna use that as my bio. Pretty good. I like myself today. Man. After a while, you kind of, I forget that sometimes I'm famous. Then when you use profound words, I'm like, that's pretty damn cool. Before I start, I'll thank you for whoever did this. And if you can see on here, the first movie I did, hey, there's a book there. Smoke Signals. When you watch Smoke Signals, I tell everybody that is exactly who I am growing up as a kid to who I am now as I continue to try to find ways to speak to the death of my father and my mother. I carry with them in all of you who I meet because I'm just looking for a mother and father. They won't be replaced, they can never be, but I can still continue to find kindness and love that I didn't have with having a mother and father. I obviously had aunties, uncles that took care of me, but nobody could be the authoritarian of what a mother can do and a father can do within guidance and acceptance. So when you watch the movie again, what you see is what I was as a kid and now how I reacted to the alcoholism within my parents and my family. And death and grief is a reality for all of us. And I've learned over the years that you honor life to honor death. So when someone dies, you don't carry grief in a heavy way, you carry grief in a positive love and respect in the treatment of how you live your life and who that person is within your life. And they will be with you always until you die. And you hope that you've created a place of honor and respect so people, when they mourn, that it's a mourning of laughter, a mourning of sadness, but a mourning of a beautiful day the next day. So the next movie over here is called Arctic Air. Now, how Arctic Air turned out was my wife, my third wife, is we had an argument and I was like, I'm out of here. And I left because abandonment is my best friend, losing my mother and my father 2 months apart. That loneliness you carry forever. And over the years, I've learned abandonment is something that I don't want anymore. So when I went back to my wife and we're having our troubles again, I realized I'm not going to run away. So the first time I ran away was I was like, I'm out of here. I phoned my manager and I said, hey, I'm moving to Canada, I'm breaking up with the wife. Find me a show. I want to do a TV show and get lost in it. And this is the show that came up. And a month later, I was working on a show. I didn't care what the show was. I just wanted to hide and run away from my breakup. So if you guys feel abandoned and feel like you have to run away from something, it's okay. But understand that it's escaping an issue is not going to do you any good. And when you fall in love with someone, that abandonment will be the easy exit because nobody wants to fail at something. So what I did was I told her I don't want to be abandoned anymore. I love my family, I love you, I love my child. Let's work on this together. And I went into therapy. She is a therapist, so she has a therapist. We have a couples therapist, and my 16-year-old has their own therapist. We had a family therapist. Not that we're in a crisis mode or anything. It's just we had to learn how to communicate with each other. So now, after that TV show, and we've been together working on who we are, we're able to argue in such a kind way. We're able to know when to stop and say, this is for our therapist to talk about. But primarily, I have something to talk about with my therapist personally that nobody else will know, but me and my therapist. And I don't talk about my wife, I talk about me. And I talk about the last time I sat with him, was last week with, my wife, our couples therapist. The couples therapist is my personal therapist too, so I have an advantage. But, when we sat there and he had us for the first time, instead of talking to him, he says, instead of telling me how you feel, tell it to her and her to me. And it was the first time we actually had a really deep communication without any complications, but the truth of how we felt. And the therapist said, Adam, tell Summer why you don't cry when she wants you to cry with her. And I turned to her and I said, Summer, I don't want to cry because for me, I'm looking for hope. I'm looking for something to strive through, to get through whatever difficulties is, because I said growing up, losing my parents, I had to learn how to understand what that meant. But when I grew up, I started one of the biggest gangs in Canada. And while I was doing that, I was teaching and training myself to prep for jail, because that's the statistics in my neighborhood. I grew up in one of the worst neighborhoods in Canada at the time when I was 14 through my high school years. And I said, I don't want to go there because I don't like that person. So I want hope to override this. So that's why I don't cry. And she was like, kind of like, holy smokes, you know? And the therapist knew that I hit my period, like, I'm done. So he continued the conversation saying, I had to talk with Adam about this, and this is what, you know, so he described more. So when you look at me here, I'm famous. I know a lot of famous people. I make a lot of money. I'm one of those guys, you know? And I don't talk about my Hollywoodness because the people who I know, if some of them walk through this door, you guys would probably need to go to the bathroom because they're famous. And a lot of people act weird around famous people, so I don't invite friends and family to events and stuff because they get really weird. And sweaty, uncontrollable, they don't know how to talk, and I don't want to put people in that position, especially my friends who look at that thinking they're gonna get harmed. They think there's a stalker, they think something weird is happening, you know, so anyhow. So Arctic Air for me was therapy, to run away, to understand what abandonment is, and to learn that I have to go back and reconnect and etc. Yeah. So the next movie is Flags of Our Fathers. I'm lucky for this movie because they play it every year to honor and respect our veterans. So what that means is I get a check every year. And it pays for my insurance, pays for my retirement, and it's a good thing. So I don't have to work all year because of the movies I've been in, especially the two movies, Wind Talkers and Flags of Our Fathers. The biggest one is Suicide Squad, we'll get to that. But to honor and respect our veterans is something that I've admired because my birthday is November 11th. So when you stand in silence, I know you're praying for me. But other than that, it's something that we should always honor because we have Native people that have participated to save the world, to save America, and that's primarily from our code talkers, whether they were Navajo, whether they're Cree, whether they're from different other tribes. So that's a recognition we should always face. And when I did Flags of Our Fathers with Clint Eastwood, there's a scene in the movie where I'm sitting on the bed and I want to see my mom, and I start crying. And when I did that, a lot of people in the room that I'm working with, the cast and the crew, they don't realize, they don't know my story to detail. In when I'm sitting in that bed, can I see my mom? I probably say that to myself every day When am I gonna see you? Are you gonna visit me? How do I communicate with you? That's something I think about all the time. And when I was in that mode, in the script, it says Ira Hayes fights back tears. So here I am, doing the scene, fighting back tears, and cut, and Clint goes, nice, again. And Clint Eastwood doesn't do 2 takes, it's 1 take, let's move on. So when he said again, I was like, oh, I failed. What's wrong with you, Beach? All right. Let's give him an extra flavor. I'll just give him a bit of tears. I'll give him something. So take 2, I give more emotion. At the end, he's like, nice. 1 more. For this whole time, we've never done 3 takes. So I feel like shit. I feel like the worst actor in the world. And I start getting upset. And I said, you know what, fuck this guy. He wants to see the pain. I'll show him the pain. I'm gonna give him it all. So what you see is me eliminating myself from that room and thinking about the people that died in war, my friends and family who died. But the most important thing when I say, can I see my mom? That's my personal space that I let the world see. And I know the answer. So when you see me say, I know. Because I know personally, I can't ever. So I get up and I walk away. And I'm like, fuck, I'm sorry. Whew. And I turn around and the person behind me, the costumes, is just crying. Like, what's going on? The other that person's crying. And I'm like, I opened the door, everybody's fucking crying. No Clint Eastwood. And it's like, what, we're good at him. Yeah, are you sure? What's going on? Dude, that was amazing. That was Clint. Well, man, sucking now, man. But no, I didn't say that. But I was like, that's pretty damn good. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go see him, see how he's feeling. So I go see him, and I was like, Clint, how was that? That was really good. Like, I said, awesome. And I go to give him a hug, and he's like, oh, old school. Come close to me. 50s, gotta love the 50s. But anyhow, so what I do with my work is very personable. About 80% of the scripts that come to me, I say no. I always joke to people that if you don't see me in an Indian movie, it's because I didn't like it for some reason, or they couldn't afford me for some reason, or something didn't work out. But I'm glad that our filmmakers are testing new ground. There's new artists, there's new everybody now. I'm primarily in a place where my wife now, her and I are creating our own projects. I told my manager and agent that I don't really want to work for anybody anymore unless they give me a lot of money. But I said we're on our new journey. So I'm creating films now with our voice, with your voice, because I was telling our table here, whenever I go to a community, I listen to everyone. I find a truth. I find what they're hiding. I find the damage. I find the resurgence. I find truth. And if we can all find that within each other, you know, we will find solutions that will take care of the difficulties that we go through. It's hard to see an addict. It's hard to see an alcoholic because you see the trauma we've carried for 250 years. When you see someone who's drinking that has given up, look at him as a human being. Look at the truth of why he's been put in submission to say, I don't want to be Indian. I want to be a human being. I don't want to be that. I'm here. And the knowledge of that and the protection that that person is doing, he is stopping time. And from my family, from our teachings, is when he is out of his time zone and is ready to be Indian again, we are there as a family to help, to pick up, to say, where were you this whole time? And then when they come out of that, they probably will be our medicine person, because he's gone to a place that is very dark, very lonely, very abandoned. And when he comes back, he'll have some sort of teaching for us. So if you look at the history, like on here, it says knowledge. Knowledge is power. As a kid, I sat on a rock in my elementary school. And I sat on this rock, and that's where I cried. That's where I hid. Nobody saw me cry growing up. And the funny thing about crying, when I told my wife about how and why I don't cry with hope, but I also told her that growing up, and she knows this, but I had to interpret it again. When my parents died, and I was 8 years old, what I faced was all of my family and all of my cousins, all of my mother, father's relationships with friends. When they saw me, I looked exactly like my father. So growing up till I was about 26 is when the crying stopped. When they would come up to me and go, oh my God, you look exactly like your dad, I loved him so much. I was like, what the fuck just happened there? And then the next one, cry. I didn't have time to cry. So to teach me how to cry is just not in my system, but I know how to cry. I'm an actor. As you can see, I can exercise that. But when someone is showing an emotion and trying to tell me something of pain, they know they can talk to me because I am not going to cry. I'm going to listen and respond because that's how I grew up. So when my wife cries, I can't cry with her because that's how I've learned how to accept emotion. Now, over the years, I'm going to try to learn how to cry. Maybe I'll sneak up on her. Hey, babe, how you doing? Yeah, I'm kidding. So, I'm invited to communities, not only just to say, I'd like to be a movie star, but Adam, what can you provide to help us find an understanding and the knowledge of how to change epidemics of suicide, drugs, alcohol, any form of abuse, disenfranchisement. Out here, what I'm liking to see is the education system is working pretty well for our Indigenous people out here. The Rosary Club that brought me down here, they have a connection with everything that's going on. And I could see kind of them blending, trying to figure out how they can be put together with the community. Now, when I come here, my focus is just our people. The non-Indigenous, they've taken care of themselves really well, so they have their system. But when I see a system coming in to try to help in some sort of way, because they see that they're all together in this, that's a good thing. But the thing that is stopping from this inclusion of us all working together is the knowledge of the last hundreds of years of how we've been treated.
Yes. Yes.
And the reaction I get from the other side is very defensive. And I tell them, I understand why you're defensive. And I know it's not your fault. But the knowledge needs to be held and explained and communicated so we can understand and not look at an alcoholic or an addict in a way that puts them farther away from us. So I have a stepbrother through my uncle that adopted me after my father died. And he's in and out of homeless, addict, back to his kid, addict, back to his kid, back and forth. Now I have a boundary with my relatives that are in that place, but they know I love them. He knows not to call me after a certain hour. I won't answer the phone, but I'll call him in the morning saying, hey, sorry I couldn't call you. How you doing? Good, awesome. Love you, see you later. Will I go to his house? No, I don't want to see his struggle. I'll help him outside of it. So boundaries I create. But I will always be there for him when he's ready to step up to the plate. I'm not going to hold his hand. He's a grown man. But my family is there to help in whatever way. So if he needs money, he is not allowed to hold paper money or have a credit card or have anything, because he told me, do not give me money. I don't know how to use it properly, and I know what I'm going to use it for. So here's some money and buy me food when I need it. So there's ways you can communicate with someone who is an outcast. But we know very well as Indigenous people, we've been an outcast for a very long time. And it's nice to see when I come to communities like this that you're getting into education. You're seeking knowledge through the language, and it's very held to the high standards here. So now how do we incorporate this knowledge, this acceptance of who we are, and go to our troubled ones to help them rise to the occasion? Because we have to, all of us, look back to the past and see the reality of how destructive the world has been to all Indigenous before they came to America. It's nothing new. It's all in the books. You can read it. Because identity right now, when I talk to the youth and the ones that open up to me that are on the brink of suicide, is I want to be Indian and they don't fucking allow me to. This is coming from a teenager with a written note because they can't be seen talking to me. How do you figure that out? I can't do anything for them because I leave the community the next day. But I have the knowledge of creating projects, movies that will go into, our first movie is about a suicide spirit. About how this darkness, whatever it is, can consume anybody, even if you're a traditional person, because we're just human beings. So in this storyline, I play a father whose wife was traditional, who killed herself. And I can't believe it, so I take my bundle and I throw it away because it didn't help her. Why the hell is it going to help me? And then my daughter who's gonna play my real daughter's gonna play my daughter in the movie, is the source that helps me deal with grief. But then her grief starts to take over because one of her friends dies. So we both carry this dark grief, and for some reason, this thing, this being, is starting to grow. And if we as a family in the movie don't acknowledge all of the griefs that we have from the past to the present, it'll affect the community. So in this movie, it's basically about hope and love will conquer it all. And that's the truth in everybody's life. So I am here, and I was talking out here, trying to figure out, what am I gonna say? Because I just open my heart all the time. And when I walked in, while I was next door, we were talking about my daughter. Now, my daughter is unbelievably talented. 98th percentile in her SAT study she did for grade 10 this year. And that's in English and arts and etc. Her math was like 89%. So she's pretty equipped. And great musician. I'll play you a song of her and her boyfriend. They produce everything. It's unbelievable. Now, my kid is two-spirit. So one day my kid said, "Dad, I'm trans." It's like, right on. Love it. Awesome. How do you feel about it? Well, I heard this song, and this song was talking about how I felt. And then I realized what the song was trying to say, and that's who I am. Awesome. So we'll have to carry this knowledge and seek what it is. And I told her, I said, in our teachings and our traditions as Anishinaabe, we have a thing called, a person called two-spirit. Now, you're using a word that is not our word as Indian people. Trans is a different word. Trans is a exceptional world that is saying choose male or choose female. Who are you? And it gets confusing. In our teachings, you are male and female. And that's it. And the respect we give you is you are of mother and father together. So you're above us. So I said, Mars, as much as I know as Anishinaabe, my teachings my whole life, I'm not in your world. I know of it. So I want you to teach me who you are. So I can understand and grow and know how to talk about you, who you are, and share it with you in our lives. But I honor you in a high level because you see from two versions of who we are. That's it. Now, when I was talking out there in society, you're damned if you walk that way. You're in hell. Now, in our teachings in Anishinaabe, when you get down to the source, why in the past we were so powerful and feared? Because in our teachings, there is no hell. And everybody's like, whoa, 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 hold on a sec. We understand there's a bad place, people carry a bad situation. But if I believed in that concept, I would be looking at my daughter a different way. So we have a lot of knowledge that we have to really put together in our lives I always tell people, have you ever met a Native American Muslim? I have. Have you ever met a Native American Buddhist? I have. Have you ever met a Native American who lives the life of the people in India? I have. Have you met an Anishinaabe? I am. Navajo, etc. Christian, evangelism. There's other Bible stuff there. So we have become a melting pot of indigenous. Who are we? What are we? But once you start damning the weak, once you start forgetting where our trauma comes from, you have given up your human being spirit. And that, for me, is what Anishinaabe is. Anishinaabe means human being, the person, the people. And if we can get back to finding who we are, because we've been hit, abused. My aunt was paid $250,000 for her abuse in residential schools. That's the highest pay you can get. It means she's been through a lot of shit. That's been going on for a fucking long time. The truth opened up 15 years ago. So I tell every 15-year-old that I go to a high school when I'm dealing with heavy stuff, you're gonna be okay. Because I'm 15 years old with you, learning how to accept the pain that I see in my aunts and my uncles. And now I know why my grandpa and my grandma were they were. Now I understand why we hide this pain. Now I understand why we get into abandonment, alcohol, all of that stuff. If we don't work together as a community, if we don't recognize each other as a melting pot, to not disregard each other as Native people, we're gonna lose the battle. Because there's a virus that is affecting our communities because of the teachings of being scared to get our kids out for higher education because they won't come back. That mentality lives with us and dies with us. So let us be fearful of our trauma. We've normalized it enough. And let's use our strength because we're still here. And look at our elders and realize, why aren't our elders killing themselves? I have never been to a reservation for my 30 years where they said, oh, fucking elder suicide today. Then let's ask them, what do we do? Let's ask them, why and how do you get your strength? When before, in the 78, we weren't even allowed to practice our religion in 1978. How did they survive that? How did they wake up in boarding schools and are here? And there are leaders, they speak our language, traditions, or whatever they do. I think our elders are our future. And we need to find a way to communicate with them. Ask them, can you help us? We have a long way to go. And this is just the start of what we're doing. I'm doing my part with my film school. When I make my movie, it becomes a film school. I'm teaching and training. We have young writers that are telling their story. And one day we'll be able to talk. One day we'll have a movie that will express who we are, why we are who we are, where it comes from, so we can finally live in peace. I was talking to this native woman who's Christian at the casino. Now, growing up, I've become non-judgmental now. Because my wife told me you can't dismiss people the way you do. I had a hard line of like, if I didn't like you, I never acknowledged you, period. And one of the not likings was when I opened up my knowledge because of my work as an actor, and I go do a movie called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, playing a native doctor in that time, and I find out the abuse that they were doing with the medicine and how they were treating our people to get them drowned in the brown medicine, just so they can take and steal whatever they needed from the tribes. That's truth. And once you learn the truth and the knowledge, you can't undo it. That's the power of this place. And it says there, knowledge. And I hope that we all can participate in finding this and lead as a people of who we are. I'm not saying change what makes you feel grounded in this place. But please find a way to communicate with the ones that need help right now. Because it is really dire. And the next place I go to, I'm going to, because the suicides is too much. They don't know what to do, and they know that I could come in there to alter our knowledge in a way to open up a passion to kind of question ourselves, to kind of bring together what it is. So as Native people, yes, we need non-Indigenous because they are more grouped. They are, when I go up north, any person that is leading the economic structure in these reservations, they are non-Native. We look up to non-Native to be our leaders. We look up to them to be our economic responsibility. We look up to them to tell us what to do. And that's okay. But it's time for us to be in that circle. I'm not saying anything bad about non-Indigenous stuff, because we have our scholars, we have our judges, we have our lawyers, we have our everything. But the groundwork needs to be this collective togetherness, because we all have a solution in how to find it, and it starts with you. Now I go home to Las Vegas with my family, and I'll plan to come back next year because we're in talks of doing some stuff. But I leave you with your search of who you are. And you define it. I found who I am, and I still learn and grow to find more and more because there's so much out there. It's beautiful. Ice-T told me, Adam, you're lucky. Really, what? Because everywhere you walk, you're walking in the footprints of your ancestors. Wow. Thanks, that's pretty good, dude. And he's like, yeah. Said for me to feel that, I have to go to Africa. That's who we are. So, love you. Any questions? I'll play you a song first. I want to pass my. Where are you? Okay, you guys ready for this exam? So this, hello, oh, there you are. My kid is 16, your boyfriend's 17. So any of you who are around that age and you don't know what to do, you're very talented, go find it.
So when you're alone, I was basking in your moment. I let the silent burning fall. I grabbed my backpack and I left in your home. I'm headed for the trees where I thought no one could find. I was waiting patiently for the God I knew is strong. And I'll go to the horizon, see the mountains look like islands, and the clouds are filled with lightning, but the sunlight still is shining, and I'll stare into the light as my fingers turn to ice. But that doesn't matter now, as long as I can see the clouds. To the horizon, see the mountains look like islands, and the clouds are filled with lightning, but the sun might still be shining. Cause I feel like if I run far enough, I'll see the sun, but even then it won't be free. So I'll just hope to God that hope finds me. You know, the best is
Any questions?
When did your career start?
I was 19 when I got my first official movie. Now, when I got this movie, I was pretty fortunate that I met the director when I was 16 for a movie called Lost in the Barrens. And the cast went out because they were looking for a teenager. And when I showed up, I performed, and the director said, Adam, I can't hire you because you don't have experience, but I wish I could. The studios won't let me. You have a natural instinct for your surroundings. And I just want to let you know that if you go do professional theater, get more training, that'll look good for my next film. And I want to work with you. And that's all I needed to hear was a motivating factor that said, I will hire you for your dream. So I did what he did, professional theater, classes, etc. In the third year when I was 19, he was doing auditions for his next movie. I showed up and he's like, Adam, so what have you been doing? And I listed it all and he's like, you're hired. And then that was it. And ever since then, each movie I did, someone said, you gotta hire this kid. And in the third, fourth year, I had to get an agent to do a Disney movie called Squanto Warriors Den. So, yeah, so, yeah, so that's how that's done.
Question back here.
Yeah. The one I really wanted was called Quick and the Dead. And they had to choose me or Leonardo DiCaprio. And it came down to them saying, Adam, we talked to the writers and they don't think it's plausible that we explain why Gene Hackman had a native woman as your mom. It's just gonna complicate it. And I said, I don't care, dude, I'm happy to be here. So I don't like Leonardo DiCaprio.
I was actually wanting to be an actor. Do you have any wisdom that you can give me for Native American actors?
First and foremost, you have to move away from here. But that's the truth. And you have to go to an epicenter of where they teach and train. And when you go there, like I told you about my story with, what's your name?
Lorna.
Lorne?
Lorna.
Lorna. Like my friend here, Lorna. I say, like I said, about this director. If you asking that question, I take what I do seriously and I'm looking for new talent. If this is what you want to do, and a year from now, I find out that you chased your dream and you're getting classes, you're trying to get theater and do the work, I will guarantee you that you'll have a job as an actor, period. So what I'm doing in my acting is creating these movies, not just because I want to work, it's because I'm wanting to find the next Adam Beach, I'm wanting to find the next producer, director, writer, etc. And there's no age limit to acting. So everybody in this room, if you wanted to be an actor and you went out and seeked it and actually did the study, or I'd say 9 months, it's almost like having a baby, you struggle, then you're born. That's good enough for me, for you to come and work for me, and I can help you, give you cheat codes on what I do and how I cheat and make things the way. No, oh, there it is. Don't hear me like that again. So I wish you the best. Yeah.
Question over here. How did you decide to become an actor when you started the biggest gang in the roughest neighborhood that you were at?
Okay. Hello. Oh, so that's what you're doing, you tricky little son of a gun. We'll start with a story, how I got here, okay, of what you're talking about. In my family, I'll do right and left. In my family, I have teachers. Did I mention this already? Teachers, doctors, lawyers, a native man married into my family who's now the premier, aka governor of Manitoba, where I'm from. And police officers, etc. That's my family. And I could go down the list. We're a pretty influential family. But on the other side, I have a crooked family. Gangs, drug addicts, drug dealers. I have one of my favorite cousins who's been in jail for murder for a long time. He's about to get out soon. And my community, they're dealing with a murder between two cousins and decapitation, body parts buried. They can't find certain things. So the reality of trauma, it really exists within my life and my relatives and my family. So growing up, when I lost my parents, I was trying to find who my mother and father was. Growing up with alcoholics at a young age, you are deemed a child of an alcoholic. So I had the traits of my mother and father. So I would bounce between uncles, this and that side, aunts, this and that side. I was comfortable with the alcoholics, kind of uncomfortable with the educators, but I went back and forth. And in this time, I found friends. My friends in high school, how our gang started. I don't really talk about this. It's pretty cool. So in high school, there's about 9 of us. And what happened was in our school, there's a handicap department. The teacher of that classroom, amazing, coolest guy. So we felt that we had to participate with helping these kids. Now, some of them would be banging their walls and would be like, hey, take it easy over there. How you doing? What are you doing? And they'd be excited that we're communicating with them. When a stupid ass kid came over and would push these kids or make fun of them, we'd warn them, do that again, we'll beat you up. And these are like, we're grade 7, grade 8. And we're telling this to like grade 12s. And they're like, who are these little shit punks, you know? And we'd fight. We'd lose, we'd win. By grade 9, we ran the school. That's how caretaker we were, was protecting the innocent, the handicapped. Now that caused a problem because the families of these kids that were running the school, the grade 12s, the grade 11s, the grade 10s, they would go and talk to their friends, and these gangs from other schools would show up. And we'd have to fight them in the park. There was no ifs, buts, and ands. So we became known as the tough school. We had the first stabbing in our school. Very proud of it. Because when that happened, nobody came to our school to fight us anymore. They would meet us outside at different events or parties. So we'd be fighting against football schools, hockey schools. It was crazy. Then one day, stupid ass friend, we had a big fight of this hockey school. Just imagine there's 20 of us, 20 of them. We wore these black pilot's jackets, just so when we fought, we didn't hit each other. After this big fight, my buddy Kevin stands on the hydrant and he goes, "Don't mess with the West End boys!" Because it was the West End we were in. And we all looked at him and go, "What the? What are you talking about?" Everybody leaves and he goes, "Well, God, we're West End, you know?" So the next day we go to school and everybody's calling us the Web. Okay, we're the Web now. So eventually we ran into a friend of ours who, this big, huge dude. Nobody messed with him. He was an adult. We were the high school kids. And we went to this store where we'd always go, he'd give us free drinks and stuff. We're hanging out, and there's about 9 of us. And he's like, "I heard about you guys." I said, "Yeah, it kind of brings a lot of trouble." And he goes, "That's okay. You know, I could help you guys." "Oh, what do you mean?" "We'll get you organized." "What do you mean?" "Well, we can put up a social. say the web is running a social and a dance, everybody loves you, they'll come to it, make some money. Yeah, dude, sounds great. So we started having socials, people would show up, we'd make money. Then he started luring us into other money-making schemes. So we started getting caught into, now, how do we make more money? So that dealt into distribution of certain stuff. How to bring in people into the group to do little stuff for us. So we became like a 300 member gang. We're on the news, we're happy about it. We were looked at, we had our clubhouses, we had our booze cans, we had a place where the biker gangs would come. We were well institutionalized. Now, that's how that formed within the gang group. We didn't know what we were into. All we wanted to do was protect these kids that couldn't have protection. And then learning along the way of what we're capable of doing. Now, what was the question again?
Go from creating the biggest gang to becoming an actor.
Okay. So at 19 was my first movie. At 16, while I was acting, I was still involved in this gang situation.
How did you decide, like, I think I'll do acting? How did you decide to?
Well, at 19, when I made my first movie, I was paid, say, $30,000. Exactly. I was the richest kid on the block.
When you choose to decide, like, when you were in a gang, like, how did you realize you had a passion? Did someone say you should go audition for this, or?
I didn't have to audition because I was getting hired already before I ended the movie. So someone would say, hey, there's this kid Adam, you gotta have him. They'd say, hey, Mr. Beach, we saw your tape of what you're doing right now. We want you to do this movie. So I was already hired. I didn't have to worry about work. So the money that I got, where did it go?
How did you decide, like, I'm gonna be an actor? I mean, when did that?
When I was 14. When I was 14, acting was an identity crisis in a way that when I walked through the door to act, I left Adam Beach's trauma at the door. I became a pirate, astronaut, a tree, a dog, anything you wanted me to be. And I realized, wow, this is a good escape. And I became better at it. So at 19, when I made my money, it went to my friends. So just to let you guys know, to this day, when I make money, I give it away. Why I do is because I know what I'm worth and I know what I'm getting, and the amount of money that I've received over the years, it's never stopped. I never have to worry about not working because I get the call all the time. So when I'm at that age and I don't know what monetary value is, 30,000 is just, 3 months of partying and having fun. It wasn't until I went away for my first movie in Halifax called Cadillac Girls. This is where I took my knowledge of the streets to say, this money I'm making, which is a lot of money for this movie, I'm gonna invest in it. Because when you have a lot of money investing in a certain type of drug, it multiplies tremendously. So my deal was with one of my friends who was a dealer. I said, look, dude, I'm gonna give you this money. I don't want you to tell anybody. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know. This takes care of everybody. My family, our friends. Right there. 78,000. and everybody would have been taken care of. But what happened? I came back and my best friend got caught for a shipment up to Thunder Bay in Canada. If I wasn't doing that movie, I would have been in jail, career done, that's it. So the common sense for me was I can't do this. So I went to my friends and I said, guys, I gotta step away. This is something I wanna do. I'm sorry. They're like, no problem, man, we're proud of you, go do it. And to this day, when I go back home, I am admired from the elite to the gangs, to the homeless, because I was homeless. I ran away from home when I was 14. The homeless took care of me. Never had to worry about anything. No abuse, no drugs, no feeding me this or that. They protected me on the streets. Indians and non-Indians, or natives and non-natives.
There you go.
Or indigenous and non-indigenous. Or First Nation and non-First Nation. No, American Indian, no American Indian. Anyhow, let's get it politically straight. We're human beings. So that's how that all accumulated. So when I say make a choice, I'm asking you to look at your family and see the right and left of things, the good and bad. Just be aware, make a common sense. Because you are your mother and father at birth, no matter what. If your father is an alcoholic or your mother is an alcoholic, you are probably going to be an alcoholic when you grow up. Now, the thing I'm asking you to do is you have to let them go. I told a young adult, I said, growing up is like dying, because you can't be a teenager forever. You have to die as a teenager to become an adult. And that death is leaving your mother and father out of the equation. They've taught you enough, whether it's good and bad. And then you now have to become your own person. Find your own truth, your own way, and hopefully it's a good one. If you fall off and you're a gang member dealing drugs, it's okay. We've normalized that. We've accepted it, as you can see in our communities. How are we going to change that? It's up to the person. You don't know who's going to do what and stuff, you know, but that's where we come to. And I could say that because that's how me and my family handle our situation. That's still going on. And sure, it drives us crazy and we're pissed off at times. But in our teachings and who we are, we have to be there for when they wake up. We have to be the family to catch them when they fall. No more abandoning. You know? So, yeah. That's a good question. Time travel there. Yeah. Yeah,
What?
I'm married. Yeah.
No. What inspired me to become an author? I mean, my life has really, you know, when you see my writings and stuff, you'll understand why I am the way I am. But what inspired me to become an author was that, because I would cry because of the way I was raised, beat up, a whole bunch of alcohol in my family, being raped, molested, and all that. I had to grow up with all of them, and I'm sure many other people did as well. But what inspired me to become an author was Sherman Alexie's books and his first movie, Smoke Signals. That's what inspired me, and he's my hero for writing. And you were so good, Victor.
Shut up, Thomas. I'll beat you up.
So I just wanted to say that, maybe a screenwriter.
Well, one of the unfortunate things about Sherman is, they called me and they said, Adam, are you okay to be in the water? Cause he kind of knows that I don't like water because my father drowned, you know? And I was like, yeah, I'm cool with it. Why? And he's like, we're writing smoke signals too. And I said, oh man. I don't want to do smoke signals too. Yeah, what? I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm 52. It's a different generation than it was back then. And it's in the Library of Congress. I can't. It's a disgrace for me to disgrace a character that I'm no longer, I have other stuff to do and, so I apologize and said I can't and yeah, so that's where that is, so. I apologize to all of you, because everybody was pissed off at me. Damn it. Yeah.
Autobiographical movie, because that would be a big hit.
I'm gonna leave it up to when I die and people could write about it. My memory lapse, because I engage so much with everybody, I keep a limitation of what I have. So I go home and I basically take the time to remember this space. And by remembering this, space, it eliminates a memory that I grew up in. So if I ever wrote an autobiography of me, you would hear the autobiography of my best friends, of who is Adam. And you'll see the multifaceted growth of who I am. And the one thing I can tell you, I've always been a kind motherfucker. So kind. Did you know Adam gave me a shirt right off his back? Did you know Adam slept with my wife? I'm just so kind. Anybody else?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Fortunately, I hate to be the sergeant of arms, but we do gotta move along with.
Where are we at? Adam, we got 20 minutes, we gotta get you out. What time is it? Well, you got 10 minutes, get out of here.
All right, if you will stay up here with me though, it is our honor, so if I could invite some of our students up here, we got a little gift for you. If I can get Tristan Ryan and Angela Williams to join me. I don't know if this is even working.
Try this. Hello.
Yeah. All right, so it is a tradition at Heritage University to present our honored guests with a blanket here. This blanket is called Tribute, and it was designed by Jared Yazzie of the NA as a homage to the rug designs woven by his grandmother. So we present Adam with this gift. With our deepest appreciation for visiting Heritage and inspiring us all with his life, his wisdom, and his words. Thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause.
Hello. Okay, we have room for one more question. Yes. Two questions.
I have a statement or something that I would like to share with you.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna ask you instead of talking.
Yeah.
But I do remember your marriage.
That's okay, she'll be okay.
Share your testimony that you gave with everybody. Those were good words that you shared with us, because I love it, some of them is something awful. I know you love red. Help. Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, do it up.
The thing I've learned about the elk teeth is it's an honor of how much you're worth in regards to marriage, acceptance, and who you are as a person. So I'm gonna make sure to use it when I bring out the pipe, and when I do, you all will be in my thoughts and my prayers. Yeah.
Was it like when you worked with Nicholas Cage?
She's asking what it was like to work with Nicolas Cage. Working with Nicolas Cage was like going to school, because he does some uncanny stuff that works on the camera. And one of them is, if he's working with 4 cameras, he knows which cameras to talk to in relation to the audience. So if this camera was the personal close-up, this one was for the group he's talking to, and this one was for the whole area. You would be performing with him, and he'd be like, oh. Then he'd go to this camera, and you're like, he's not looking at me anymore. What's he doing? But he's talking to you. And then he'll go back to you for his close-up. And it was so confusing that he was able to do this camera trick. So Christian Slater helped me with what he was doing, because he does it too. So now when I show up to work, I'm always complimented with my attention to the audience with the camera. And I've learned that through Nicolas Cage and Christian Slater. Yeah. Huh? Yes.
I need a new profile picture. Could we?
Yeah, come on up. And yeah. Yeah. Hi, how are you? Pleasure to meet you.
I got a lot of them.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. There's actually a couple gifts out just outside, so you are welcome to take one per person.